Hello gentlemen, welcome back to the Chap'S Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today is Christmas Eve, a day in which people will start to come together to join and embrace the festive spirit that the midwinter festival traditionally brings to all households, whether you're an adherent of the Christian faith or just somebody such as myself who enjoys this time of year for the collective festivities that we all get to enjoy. So today, as we are gentlemen, or at least on our journeys to Chap Nirvana, I thought I would share with you a story of a gentleman who, through following his traditional ways, was able to make life a little better for other people on the journey. So, let me tell you about a gentleman and let me tell you where his story begins, in a quiet village called Foxglove, which nestled in the rolling hills of the English countryside, not terribly far from where I sit today. Now, in the village of Foxglove, there lived the most traditional of British chaps that you would hope to meet, a man called Edward Harrington. Now, Edward was a man of refined manners and quiet dignity, exactly the sort of thing that you would expect from a British gentleman. And he loved the traditional ways. He was known for dressing in his tweed suit. He was known for thoughtful conversation, and he had a heart which carried the warmth of the crackling hearth like we sit around here today. Although he had long since retired from his career in the City of London, his days were anything but idle. He found joy in tending to his garden, walking his companion, his Labrador Bramble, and sharing tea and stories with his neighbours, all who knew his name and had as much time as they could to give to our friend Edward. Now, as Christmas approached, the village of Foxglove became abuzz with the preparations for the midwinter festival that we all enjoy. And the Harrington estate was a modest yet charming Georgian house which he had bought when his career was at its high point. It was adorned with beautiful holly wreaths and twinkling lights. And despite his outward gentlemanly manner and composure, Edward felt the pang of loneliness from within. Because sadly, he had decorated his home, yes, but he missed the presence of his beloved wife Margaret, who had passed away several years earlier. And from that point on, his life had been plunged into a sort of darkness, a sadness, a depression. Because, as often we married men will say, our wives are our better halves. When you remove your better half, what's left? A lesser of the whole. And that's exactly how Edward felt. His only daughter, Alice, lived abroad with her young family. And whilst Edward was very proud of Alice's accomplishments and the fact that she was a successful woman with her own children, he missed that bustling energy which her presence brought to the family home. And this was never more acute than during the festive period, where the big, sprawling house, the edifice of his successes in life, felt like a prison of loneliness, absolutely. One frosty morning, Edward was strolling through the village square, and he noticed a small crowd gathering near the church. The Reverend Parker, who was the resident vicar in the church, was addressing the group, and on this cold frosty morning, as he spoke, the vapour of his breath could be seen hanging in the crisp air. And Reverend Parker said, "As many of you know, the Carmichael family, one of our family of citizens within the small village of Foxglove, had fallen on hard times. James Carmichael had lost his job earlier in the year, and their youngest child, Clara, was presently recovering from an illness. And They were really struggling to make ends meet. Now, Edward listened intently. He remembered James Carmichael as a diligent craftsman who had built the sturdy oak bookcase in his house. So he knew him personally. He was aware that this was a talented man. And he was saddened to hear that the family had fallen upon the toughest of times. But there and then settled within him a determination to help, to make things better for the Carmichael family. So Edward approached Reverend Parker after the crowd had dispersed, and he said, "Reverend Parker, what can I do to contribute to the Carmichael family to make their Christmas a good one? Let me know how I can assist." Now the Reverend's face lit up when he found one of the citizens of the village offering to help, as he knew they would in these small English communities. And he said, bless you, Mr. Harrington. Any help would mean the world to them. Perhaps some provisions for the children. That's a good start. Why don't you try that?" So Edward tripped along thinking, okay. He was starting to formulate a plan of how he could help the family. Over the next week, Edward visited many of the small village shops in Foxglove, provision shops, little bits and pieces, and he selected items with the utmost of care, with personal attention. He filled a large wicker basket with staple foods, with meats, treats, and toys for the children, all important for that midwinter festival period, the Christmas period. From the bakery, he bought a beautiful fruit cake. And from the haberdashery, he chose a soft scarf for Mrs. Carmichael, the mainstay of the family, the mother who was holding it all together. And he also commissioned one of the local carpenters to repair the Carmichael's creaky front door, ensuring that it would be sturdy for the winter and they would be warm and tucked up, encapsulated in the loving warmth of their family home during the cold, long winter months ahead. On Christmas Eve, Edward loaded up the basket with all of these provisions and things which he had bought, and he put them into his car. He drove it to the Carmichael cottage, which was on the edge of the woodland outside Foxglove village. The house was modest, with ivy growing up the outside the stone walls, and there was smoke curling away from the chimney, showing that there was a fire much like ours burning inside. Edward knocked on the door, and James Carmichael answered. The expression on his face, a mix of surprise and gratitude to see his former employer. Obviously, he'd engaged James Carmichael to make, the item in his house. "Mr. Harrington," James said, "what a pleasant surprise. Please come in and join my family and warm yourself alongside the fire. Stand by the hearth and warm yourself." Edward stepped inside, and the warmth of the fireplace greeted him, filling him with an inner warmth, because he knew what was about to happen. The Carmichael children, Clara and her older brothers, Thomas and James, came peeking out from behind their mother, their eyes wide open with curiosity to find a visitor to the house, which was not a common occurrence. "Merry Christmas," Edward said, settling this large basket he was carrying onto the table. "I thought your family might enjoy a few extra treats this holiday season," he said. And on this, when they saw what was about to happen, they realised what Edward Harrington had done. Tears started to well in Mrs. Carmichael's eyes. As she examined the contents of the basket, she was overwhelmed. "This is more than we could ever have hoped for," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington." Clara, the little girl recovering from illness, holding a wooden doll which she had taken from the basket, which Edward had brought, looked up at Edward with a shy smile. "Thank you, sir," she whispered in the most demure little children's voice. Edward stayed for a cup of tea, enjoying the warmth and the gratitude that filled the room. As he drove home through the moonlit woodland, he felt a profound and overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Yet, he couldn't shake the thought of his own home, which of course would be quiet and empty and held for him nothing but the sad memories of his departed wife, Margaret, of memories of his child Alice when she was young and playing in the house before she'd moved abroad with her family, and his own sort of castle of solitude awaited for him within the house. That night, as Edward sat stoically by his fireplace, sipping a glass of mulled wine which he had made himself, the doorbell rang. Surprised, he jumped up, hoping that one of his neighbours was calling around, dropping off maybe a Christmas card or just coming to say hello. He opened the door and his jaw dropped as he saw his daughter Alice standing upon his doorstep along with her family. Their cheeks rosy from the cold, but with the biggest of smiles, beaming the love and affection as they drank in his own look of surprise. Edward's heart swelled as he welcomed them inside his house. His grandchildren, Sophie and Henry, rushed in to explore the house, their laughter echoing through the halls. Alice, through her tears and smile of happiness, explained they had managed to arrange a last-minute flight, wanting to surprise him because they knew that he would be alone and probably feeling a little sad. The next morning, the Harrington family was filled to the brim with the joyful chaos that Edward had missed. As the family exchanged gifts, they shared a hearty breakfast, and later Edward led them on a walk through the snowy woodland. Bramble, the Labrador, bounding ahead, the children running after him. He was barking, they were screaming. It was those wonderful sounds of family life which had been so absent from Edward's life up to this point. As the family gathered around the dining table for their Christmas dinner, Edward looked at their faces, illuminated by the glow of the candlelight which he had set on the table. He thought of the Carmichaels and the joy he had been able to bring them. Christmas, he realised, was not about the grandeur of gifts or festivities, but about the connections that we nurture and the kindness that when we are able, we extend to other people. That evening, as Edward sat around the fire and read Charles Dickens' famous story, A Christmas Carol, to his grandchildren, he felt the presence of Margaret, his late wife, and he revelled in the feeling of love and laughter that they had had together and has the family continued to have going forwards. He silently resolved to continue spreading generosity and cherishing the bonds that made life so rich at this time of year. In the quiet village of Foxglove, Edward Harrington had discovered the true spirit of Christmas, and that it lies not in receiving, but in the giving of gifts. But not just gifts, the giving of time and the giving of love to those around us, for who their own lives may be deficient in those things. And he also realised that his life had been enriched in the bringing of joy and love to the lives of others. And I think we can perhaps all share some elements of this story that Edward Harrington experienced on this day. I hope you have the most amazing Christmas going forwards. I absolutely hope within my heart of hearts that you are not lonely, that you are surrounded by those around you who love you, and that you feel wrapped in the joyous spirit of this midwinter festival period, whatever that may mean for you. And if you are lonely, well, Perhaps it will help to know that there are others who are thinking of you, because I'll be thinking of you today as I enjoy my family experience going forward over the next few days. So, there we go, folks. All the very best. Take care, and I'll speak to you again very soon.